Hello and welcome to Share.care's What is Manly radio show and podcast. Men feel more lonely, lost, and not useful in society than ever in history. Males are not attaching to school, work, or women. What it means to be a man appears lost. Is there a framework for being manly that we can unearth?
Welcome to Share.care, an all-inclusive community sharing experience, strength, and hope to create strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships. Share.care communities work toward every individual feeling safe, valued, and heard, free from the threat of danger, pain, or harm. Each episode, founder Damian Andrews explores the principles underpinning Share.care and invites expert special guests to share their knowledge so you can easily reap the benefits so many others experience. You hold the choice to create your future. Let it be with strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships.
G'day, Brenden. How are you?
Good, David. Life is always great when I'm with you, man. Life is good. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. And it's again a pleasure and honor. And same on my behalf as well. It's always wonderful talking with you. And for the audience, Brenden Kumarasamy, he's the founder of Master Talk, and he helps ambitious and executives and coaches become the top 1% communicators in their industry. He's awesome. He's excellent in speaking. I aspire to be like Brenden, and part of that, maybe that's what leads us into this topic we're talking about is what is manly. In today's world, there seems to be a lot of talk about men being lost, sitting in basements playing video games, as we were chatting about during the pre-show. What's your take on that, the situation, the state of the world at the moment, and where do we go from there?
Yeah, for sure, Damien. For me, what I found, what's fascinating, Esther Perel explains this so well. Where 100 years ago, 150 years ago, whether it was good or bad isn't really the point. It's that gender roles were very well defined. So the man's role in a family was go out there, go make the money. And the woman's role in a family traditionally was, hey, stay home, take care of the kids, manage everything else so that it's a good symbiotic relationship. But then what happened as the years went by is those gender roles start to get misdefined. They start to get meshed in together, especially in regards to women. Now women can take on a lot of those roles that they previously weren't allowed to take on, because they, just 200 years ago, they weren't allowed to vote. They weren't allowed to do this. They weren't allowed to do that. But now they can make money. Now they can create roles. So what this does, in my opinion anyways, but I'd love to get your take as well, David, is this creates a lot of confusion amongst men in a few different ways. One is, what's my purpose? What is my role? If the opposite sex can do what I was only committed to doing before, but now it becomes like, what role does a man play in society now? Like, what role does that person play? That's one piece, and then the last piece is just clarity around purpose. I think this is something that every generation of men before us struggled with as well, and women too, I would argue. But it's really about, like, who am I? What am I trying to achieve? And a lot of us don't ask those difficult questions, so we get lost. So those are a couple of my initial thoughts.
Yeah, that's interesting that you mentioned that. And again, we're not talking about what is right, but the point and the principle of that, because I'm sure there'll people jump on and make some comment about that, which is fine. Create discussion. But the point that you're making there, the point that I heard is this whole what's my purpose has got confused, because we did have defined roles. And we're not saying those roles were right. We're just saying that people knew what they were doing. They knew what their purpose was. They knew what it was about. And it seems to me, from what I've seen as well, that the role or the reason young men are sitting in basements just playing video games and even not doing that, wondering what their life is about, completely relates to that, as to what is my purpose that hasn't been defined anymore. I know, like, I look at it from a generational perspective. I look at my dad, for example, And my dad, he worked for the same organization his entire life. He worked in different positions, but that was what was expected. He never had to make a choice as to, do I go and work somewhere else? Whereas today we have, and certainly when I was growing up, to a degree that was happening as well. You had choice, but I wonder if we've spent enough time teaching people how to make a choice as to how to find out who they are. What are your thoughts in that regard?
That's a great point, Damien, right? When we have more choice, unfortunately, that sounds good on the surface level, and it does for a small group of people, but for most of us, choice creates confusion. Who should I date? Well, 100 years ago, it used to be, well, everyone in my village. You can't really leave that village. So there wasn't that much choice. It's like, okay, what? But that also creates clarity. When there's less choice, there's more clarity. And in profession, right? If your dad's dad is a farmer, and that his dad is a farmer, and his dad is a farmer, like you know what you're going to do in your life. You're going to be a farmer. But now what's happening is the unlimited optionality of our life is now creating unlimited confusion amongst ourselves. So there's kind of two extremes to that logic. The one extreme that I would argue me and you live in, which is more the positive end of the spectrum, is because we have unlimited choices, me and you, or people like us, we sit down and we go, okay, let me have fun, kind of nerding out over the decision-making process of what tree I should follow based on self-awareness, a lot of inner work, deep work, coaches, mentoring, deep discussions, so that I can figure out the direction that makes sense for me. So that's one side of the spectrum where we can uniquely design the life that we want that none of our predecessors have lived. One simple example with me is how I'm the only entrepreneur in my family. I'm the first person to get a university degree. I'm the only person in my lineage of family who's a communication coach. But it doesn't make it, that profession didn't even make sense like just a generation ago, or even to me. But the other side of the spectrum, and then I'll throw it back to you, is the endless amount of choices mean people are overwhelmed. And then, especially with social media, they start comparing themselves to people who find that direction. And then they just go, oh my God, my life really sucks. And that creates a downward spiral into a place that we don't like to be in.
I love what you just mentioned there. I'm making that note that you said we compare ourselves on social media. So there's a combination here that I hadn't made that connection before, but it seems we've entered a period where we've got unlimited choice to do what we want to do, and a period where we have access to unlimited information to see what everyone else is doing and to compare to. That sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Correct. It's a double-edged sword, right? Yeah. So in a small minority of cases, this is actually a tremendously good thing. Because like when I scroll social media, which is a minority case, I'll go, oh, okay, that's what that person does get to that result. What can I do differently in my life to get there? But on the other side of the spectrum, it's, oh my God, my life, it doesn't matter how much I improve my life, I'll never be as good as such and such or this person. And we use it as a vehicle to get to a really bad place in our life. And then the other piece to that, which is more of a funny follow-up thought, is around dating in women, right? Or especially since it's a manly podcast, so I don't think there's a lot of women listening to this, is like today you have unlimited options. If you're a manly guy, you're successful, and you're a gun, you don't fear rejection, you could, in theory, go on hundreds of dates and just pick the right person for you. It's like you have unlimited leverage. It's like crazy. Whereas before technology, you had to really go out of your way. You don't have to do that anymore. But the opposite end is true. But if you're not there, you're not taking care of yourself, you're not leveling up, you're not getting to the place you want to be in your life, you look at all those options and you go, they'll never pick me. I can't win against all these other guys. And it creates a lot of broken self-esteem.
I love that. You're not leveling up. That's an interesting point, because I think for me today, I probably really underestimate how much work that I did to find who I was. And then at the end of the day, it wasn't finding who I was, just choosing to be someone, which is ironic. It's that full circle where, there's all this talk about, finding yourself. But at the end of the day, it's not about, well, for me anyway, this is how it was. It was, I get to choose who I am. I don't have to find it. I just decide that I'm going to be whatever I want to be. And that was my choice. And I actually went through and created my own little mission statement and things along those lines that set out who I am, and made that process easier. So every day I know who I am. Every day I go to bed feeling great. And I'm just wondering from that side of things, we've got this, and just wondering how, because it sounds easy, but it doesn't. I mean, I look back, it wasn't an easy process to get there. It's easy now. My life is so easy now. But the process of getting there was challenging. So it sounds like, we've got this process where we've entered this world of ultimate choice, and then ultimate access to information, which has created, as you said, unlimited confusion. I love that quote. Unlimited opportunity creates unlimited confusion. I love that. And at the same time, we probably don't like ourselves that much. How do we move forward from it? Or how does someone move forward from that might be in that desperation period? I mean, obviously they've got to be open to it, I would imagine. What are your thoughts on that?
That's correct. And I think the benefit of this conversation is I'm pretty sure statistically most people listening to this podcast are probably open to that conversation too, or else any of the tips we share probably wouldn't serve anybody. But for me, and this is something I want to write towards the end of my life, Damien, is a book I want to write called The Optimizer, which is a book about how do you, in a game theory optimal way, live your life so that you can enjoy the fulfillment a lot faster.
Yeah.
And part of that, because me and you did the same in our work, we just did it in very different stages of life, right? I probably did it in my early 20s. I think you did it in like your late 20s, early 30s or something.
Yeah,
so,
you're much more efficient than me, that's for sure, because it took me a long time.
Right, but there's a reason for that. It's not because I'm smarter or more magical or philosophical. It's because I had access to more information. Right, that I just leveraged in a more efficient way. Because when I was 17 or 18, that's when podcasting started. So I didn't even have to read books. I could just sit there, and that's what I did actually, which goes into the work. I listened to 10 hours of podcasts a week.
Wow.
A week. That's how I gained that clarity. But what's the first step based on what I know today? And of course, if we have this conversation again in 10 years, my answer will be completely different. Yeah. But where I start with, Damien, is a few things. So the first thing is the idea that decisions are often more effective than passions as a vehicle. We hear this all the time, motivational content. Find your passion. If you find your passion, everything's going to unlock. Find your ikigai. Like, what can you get paid a lot of money to do that you also love, that serves the world, and that passions you? So that sounds good on paper, and me and you are living our ikigai. But the challenge with most people is that's so hard to optimize. Like, how in the world am I supposed to find that? Because if you had asked me 5 years ago, I wouldn't have an answer for you. Like, I didn't know how to find this because master kind of fell on my lap. So what's the answer? The first part. There's multiple parts, but let me start number one. Do what Gay Hendricks calls finding your zone of excellence. He says there's like 4 different zones. There's the zone of incompetence, the zone of competence. I'll define each one shortly. The zone of excellence, and the zone of genius. So the zone of incompetence is like you suck at it and you shouldn't do it. Okay, so like for Brenden, it's gardening. Like, why am I gardening? It makes no sense. It's just a waste of time. Driving is another example. Just I'll kill people. Like, I should stay away from that. Edit that one out. But anyways,
so now I want to bring you here and put you in a car and send you around.
So yeah, I shouldn't be driving.
On the farm and hoon around in a tractor.
There you go. So that's incompetence. You just shouldn't be doing it. Okay. Yeah. Competence is something you're good at, but you don't particularly enjoy doing. Cleaning the toilet's a great example of that. Yeah, like I can do it. Like, it's easy. You take one thing and you scrub it around. But you don't wake up every morning going, wow, this is so cool. I can't believe I get to do this. I'm so talented at this. Doing the dishes, zone of competence. Like, we're good at it, but like, who cares? Like, there's no zone of excellence. This is where things get a little tricky. This is where things get interesting. The zone of excellence is specifically the area of your life where you're exceptionally talented at it. You get paid good money for it. You get a ton of praise for the work that you do, but you don't really enjoy it.
Ooh, right. Yeah.
So a good example of this is you're a lawyer. Yeah. You're an entertainment lawyer for Hollywood. You're an investment banker on Wall Street. You're a finance executive. You're a sales guy, really good at tech
people
sales.
That actually like doing that, which is kind of scary. But anyway.
Yeah, some people do. Right?
For all the
Some
lawyers
people do.
listening, I don't apologize.
But there's I mean, I don't want to misquote, but there was one podcast I heard where somebody said, and so that's why I don't know. They said like half of lawyers are like clinically depressed, so it's not a good
And to
thing.
put that into fair context, there, I know many lawyers and work with many lawyers, and they're exactly what you describe. It's a zone of competence. They're doing it because they're good at it, but no, they don't love it. I haven't yet met one lawyer that loves what they do, but it certainly serves a purpose for making their life secure for their family. So
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's where the discrepancy between zone of competence, zone of excellence comes in.
Yeah.
So and I have a point to this. I'm just using the time to define it. So competence just means like we're good at it, but it's like whatever, like cleaning the toilet, whatever. But zone of excellence, it really goes into your friends who are lawyers. So this is not just about the money and the security. It's also you get a lot of recognition at work. Hey, Damien, you did such a great job on this case. Here's a $25,000 bonus. Here's a $10,000 bonus. Like that type of thing. And then you have the zone of genius, which is everything from the zone of excellence. And the one piece that gets added on to genius is like, you love it. Like, this is so cool. But the challenge is, and I'll throw it back to you, the challenge here, Damien, is most people cannot optimize for the zone of genius right away. So my first advice is to make decisions to actually optimize for your zone of excellence. So for me, that was in a prior life, becoming an accountant. I knew I was going to be very skilled at it, and I was very skilled at it. Technology consulting. So these jobs pay good money, great security, pretty much guaranteed excellent upper middle class life, but it wasn't the thing that was driving me. But the argument I will make is finding the zone of excellence is better than doing nothing at your home and doing nothing.
Yeah. I love what you've said there about decisions are often more effective than passion. And like you said, finding the zone of excellence is doing something, which is much more good for your well-being and health, actually doing something. Because I read somewhere that it's impossible to be depressed while taking action, which is an interesting point. And if you're sitting in your basement watching video games or playing video games, and I suppose both are relevant now. It surprises me how many people upload video games to YouTube and people sit there and watch them. It's kind of like, watching, or even grass and growing would be more exciting, I would think. But anyway, that's just my 2 cents. And I used to play video games.
Oh, same. I used to watch people play video games too.
I didn't watch them, but I used to play them. But I'm watching anyway. We'll move on from that. But this whole point of making a decision, because that's what we're coming back to before. We've got this ultimate ability to make a decision, but we haven't been taught how to make a decision. Well, that's what I'm seeing. People haven't really been taught how to make a decision. Do you think that's a fair statement, that you're saying that decisions are more effective than passion? Which, yeah, I love that statement. That's going to be the quote for this episode of the podcast. But at the same time, we've got the ability, complete freedom to make decisions, and yet we haven't really been teaching people how to make decisions. Or from what I've seen, we haven't been teaching people how to make a decision. Well, is that a fair statement from where you're from? Is it that we don't see that, and how do we overcome that?
Absolutely, Dave. I just love your curiosity. That's why I love doing podcasts with you. It's so much fun. So you're absolutely right. So I think the best way to making this concrete for people, because I'm getting better over time at explaining this too, is my own personal story. So let's start with this. I'm 12 years old.
Yeah.
Which wasn't too long ago. For those who are listening, I'm 14 years old currently, so this is when I was 12. No, okay.
So your listeners are going, what?
They're like, wow, this 14-year-old kid is so brilliant. And you go, wow, David, where'd you find
That's what I say. I mean, I'm 12 years old too. I mean, isn't that your birthright as a male? You mentally stop at that age, just keep all your toys. They just get more they get more expensive. All my friends, especially the wealthy ones, they haven't changed. It's just toys got more expensive.
There you go. That makes sense. So building on that, I'm 12 years old, right? And the career counselor comes up to us. I'm in grade 6 at this point. So I'm finishing up elementary school, going into high school. Yeah. And they look at the class and they say, guys, you need to figure out what you want to do in life. And obviously when you're 12, you don't care. You're like, oh, I want to be a comedian. I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a YouTuber or some random thing. Whereas me, I took that question really seriously, Damien, because my parents are factory workers.
Yeah.
So for me, the question was never, hey, what are you
Mm.
passionate about, Brenden? For me, the question was always, what does the world need you most to do right now and why? And for me, it was taking care of my family. Like retiring my mom so she didn't have to work at a factory was my number one concern, was my number one priority, rather, even if it meant, and I want people to hear this, even if it meant doing work I didn't love. It wasn't even a factor in my mind.
Yeah.
Like doing something I was passionate about. I didn't really care. That only became a factor later in my life. So how did I make the decision? Which is the first framework. I call it the process of elimination. It's a lot easier for us, Damien, to figure out what we don't want to do in life relative to what we do want to do. So let me throw an example at you. And once again, this is not to create any animosity towards this career. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just to demonstrate the exercise. So example, do you want to be a garbage man, Damien?
No.
Okay, so let's keep going. Just two more. We'll do two more. Do you want to be a pastor at a church?
No.
Okay.
Although
Do you want
the
to
funny
be
story with that was when I was a kid, there was, because I grew up Catholic and we went to church and things like that. I was very young and I decided I wanted to see how fast an envelope would come back to me. And the only envelope I had was one for joining up in the ministry. And so I sent that to myself and then it's come back and my dad's looked there and go, what do you want to, what? What do you want to, are you going to, I just sent a letter to myself to see how long it would take to come back.
That's funny.
I didn't put a stamp on it. I wrote my name and address and put it in the post and then waited for it to come back. But it just happened to be one to join the ministry on the back.
That's so random. There's always something I learned from you, Damien. That's always left field. So pastor at a church, fair enough. So you're still a maybe, which is fine. And then the third one would be, let's say, do you want to be a dishwasher? Would be the third one.
No. Well, that was something I had because my mum used to ask, or my mum used to get asked, why don't you buy a dishwasher when we were younger? And she goes, I don't have to. I've already got two, pointing to me and my sister. That was our job as kids. So I've done that job. I don't want to go back.
Absolutely. So I want to make sure we're clear for those of you listening. So there's nothing wrong with any of these careers.
No.
But what I was doing with Damien here, with you for a second, was just it's a lot easier for us to say no to things than it is for us to say yes. So what you want to do is you want to make a list of all the careers. And I always recommend starting with the career. Always. And I'll explain later why, because it's just more of a guaranteed outcome. So what happens, and the reason I say it that way is because whenever I give advice, Damien, I always like to give it to the majority of a population, not a minority. Because a minority who's really witty and finds that business idea and figures it out, they don't care about this framework because they already found what they wanted to do in life. Yeah. But for most of us, it's you take those careers and you start scratching them up. So I'm back to 12 years old. I'm literally sitting in front of my computer. I have a Wikipedia page open. This is a real story. And I have a list of all of the careers. That are just a list, and I start scratching them out. The stuff that I really didn't want to do. So for me, I was saying that I didn't want to be a dishwasher. I didn't want to do this because I wanted to make at least $100,000 a year. That was a big, important thing for me. And it doesn't have to be for those of you who are listening to this, right? It's just whoever your life is, you just go in that. So I start scratching them off. And then the next area I start scratching off from the same list is what do I think when I compare myself to the other people in my classroom that I could do better than? So I was like, okay, John is probably better than me at history. Julia is probably better than me in, I don't know, cooking, something like that. But it was really easy for me to get to that conclusion because I was only good at one thing on my report card, and that was mathematics. So then what happened is I looked up only math-related careers. I looked at all the salaries, and I literally did this all in a day when I was 12 years old without ever knowing what these jobs did. And then what I did is I landed on two final career paths. Being an actuary, which for those who don't know is you calculate the statistics of somebody dying, and you work in an insurance company. We're not
going to go there.
You got it. And then the second one was being an accountant.
Yeah.
So then I did a little bit of research on both, and I ultimately decided to be an accountant when I was 12 years old because I realized that, like being an actuary kind of sucks, even if I get paid more money to do it. So I'll just be an accountant. And notice how all of that I did without ever having a passion or a purpose. That came later in life.
Yeah, that's interesting that you've gone through the process of elimination. We've only got a few minutes left before we have to wind up for the radio viewers. So I just want to kind of sum that up a little bit as to where we're at the moment, and then we can continue the conversation. But it seems to be this whole process that is it comes back to being able to make a decision and being clear about where you want to go. Do you think that's where the current problem is?
Absolutely, Damien. I know in the long form, we're going to go deeper into the other frameworks I have. But yeah, you got the general idea, which is the problem with most of us in society is we're fearful of making decisions, period. Whereas for me, the big idea is you make a decision to move forward because the one asset in your life that you cannot get more of is time. And time is always ticking on you like a dynamite. So you need to make sure that, like an hourglass or something. So you need to make sure that you're better off making a decision than none, because you're just wasting precious time that you can't get back. That's why I had an incredible amount of urgency to do all of this inner work in my early 20s, because I felt the pain of running out of time, which most people usually feel in their mid 40s, hence the midlife crisis. But I just skipped that and I said, let me have that midlife crisis in my 20s so I can get 20 years back.
That's interesting. You said you felt the pain of running out of time. Is that, do you think we need that to start actually taking that? Because you mentioned earlier too that was it you took the question seriously of what you were going to do with your life because of your family circumstance. Is that part of that motivation we need? A friend once said to me, she said, you're motivated by your pain until you learn to be motivated by your joy. And I thought that was very profound. Do you think that is that process where we actually, when we're running out of time, that's when we start to take these things seriously? When we're young, we don't even contemplate that.
It's a fantastic question, Damien. Here's my principle, because I think the principle matters more.
But then, because we've probably got about 50 seconds to go.
Sure.
But that's right. So go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. So feel free to.
Well, actually, maybe we won't, because we are literally about to run out of time for the radio. We'll continue this in the long form for that, because I know there's a detailed answer to that question. But it sounds like from that side of things, this running out of time is really important, and that we need to have some sort of motivation to want to make a decision, and then we need to have a reason, a capacity to make a decision. So that's probably where we're going to wind up now for the radio listeners. We're going to continue this discussion in long form. So if you want that for radio listeners, tune into the podcast and pick up from where we've just left off. And we're back. Sorry for cutting you off there, but yeah, we needed to end that so that we could end the show in a reasonable way for the radio side of things, because radio otherwise they'll just tune it out. They'll fade it down to mid-sentence, which is fair enough because they have the news to cut to. So coming back to this point of what we were talking about, this pain, you felt the pain of running out of time. Do you want to expand on that and how that's important?
For sure, Damien. So here's kind of the principle I was alluding to a little bit earlier, which is there's 1,000 different ways to play the game, right? So the key here is what we're bringing up is kind of what are the most common ways that we see the majority. But for you who's listening, it might be a niche case. So I'll give you some examples of things I've seen in my life. One is a shocking moment, a tragic event that completely shifts your perspective. So Brenden Bouchard is famous to have said that. He calls it the car accident that gave him a second chance. He was in Puerto Rico. His car crashed and he almost died. So that changed his perspective and made him take life more seriously. The other example is more just you sit there and you realize it. So for me, there wasn't like a cataclysmic event. Yeah, sure, I had a surgery when I was younger, but that wasn't the cataclysmic event that made me go, oh my God, life is precious. Because I was never in a near-death scenario. I kind of just woke up in my own consciousness and said, oh, objectively speaking, I'm going to be dead in 6 years. I should probably figure this out. That's where I got my anxiety to take action. And the third most common case I've seen is a conversation that somebody's had with somebody else. One of my cousins had that, where his sister just yelled at him once and said, "You're going to die someday." And he was like 15. He was really overweight. For a 15-year-old kid, he was pretty fat, if I'm being honest. And then he sat down in his bed one day and he realized he was going to die. And then literally in 6 months, he lost like 80 pounds. It was crazy. And then now he's like a super buff guy. So everyone gets to the conclusion differently. But I think the most common way is realizing that death is the ultimate motivator. Like once you make friends with death and you realize that death is the ultimate Armageddon for all of us and we all have to go there, that forces us to optimize our time more efficiently while we're still on Earth. And that's what worked for me.
Yeah, it's interesting what you've said there, and what stood out for me was and I added a little bit at the start, but what is your anxiety to take action? I might make that the new quote for for the podcast, because I guess what it is, and you highlighted something for me at the start of this or radio show podcast, was that you said for those listening, they probably want to, they're in a position where they realize they need to do something. They're searching and they're on that path already. How do we reach the people that aren't on that path? Do we like go knocking on doors and dragging people out of basements and go, here, look, there's sunlight out here? How do you reach someone that is not yet ready to listen, that hasn't discovered this anxiety to take action?
You're asking the tough ones today. So I'm going to give you a personal opinion, Damien. Yeah. You take it for what it's worth.
Yeah.
So I remember a few years ago, Lewis Howes, the host of the School of Greatness, interviewed a woman named Lisa Nichols, who's one of the top motivational speakers on the planet. She's a lot off the radar these days. She's just enjoying her retirement now in the Bahamas. And she was on the podcast. And Lewis asked her a really fascinating question, Damien, which really ties into your question. And the question for Lisa from Lewis was, what's the best advice you have for me? And I was interested in hearing the answer. I was like, I wonder what Lisa's going to give Lewis as advice. And she looked at him and said, my dear, I'm 20 years older than you are. She's in her 50s. Lewis is in his 30s at the time. Yeah. And she says, the biggest mistake I made in my life, Lewis, was playing the conversion game. And then much like Lewis and myself, kind of said, what's the conversion game? Like, what is that? And then Lisa went on to say, what's interesting about personal development and growth and podcasts like this, Lewis, is the day that you see the light, the day that you find the purpose, the day that you read the book, the Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, the Tony Robbins conference, the Jim Rohn insight, the first instinct that you have when you see the light is you want to show the light to everyone else around you, to your mom, your brother, your sister, your cousins. And then you come to a stark realization that they don't want to see the light. Or they're not ready to see. Like, mom, I just read this book. It literally, I swear, it only takes 2 hours. Read it. Like, have you ever heard about vision boarding? And they don't want to hear it. Yeah. And it annoys you. It hurts you. It pains you. So what's my advice? I believe as people who have found the gift or who have the gift or have found the purpose, we should spend most of our time helping those who want to find it first, because that energy is better spent. That's my personal opinion. And I learned that lesson early because there's so many, like my family members, and they're all great. They're all living great lives, but they don't want to jump into personal development. And for me, I think it's more about saying, let's love that person where they are, but spend most of our energy on the people who actually do want to change. That's why I'll always prioritize the time that we're spending together over somebody that doesn't want to change and me spending that same 60 minutes convincing them to.
Yeah, that's an interesting point you make, and I'll come back to this point, but I'm going to make it now, is there'll be people out there that's saying, well, yeah, but there's young men committing suicide and you can't help them after they're dead, which is a valid point. But where I want to go from that is I want to share from my experience. There's a number of people, both men and women, that I've helped in the legal space, particularly to do with getting their children back or having access to their children. And what I found really difficult in relating to that was, to me, it was the action seemed fairly clear. Here, do this, do this, do this. But the amount of effort that I had to put in, and initially I was helping a broad range of people, and now I've just distilled it to helping people really close to me because of that point. For me, it was so emotionally draining, not about explaining what to do, but about convincing them and stopping them doing stupid stuff, which was going to hurt them. And even then they still did it. One dad I was recently working with, I said, don't do this. And he did it. And now 6 months later, it's affected him negatively. And he's looked back and gone, I shouldn't have done that. And I'm going, yeah. And I tried so hard to convince him, saying, don't do that. Don't do that. And because I cared about him, and it was exhausting. It was really exhausting to me. And that's where I've actually had to stop, because it was sacrificing myself to a point where there was no positive point to it at all. So this is where I'm trying to work out this balance of, okay, we want to help people, we want them to be there, but the point that you raise is, yes, we put that energy into helping people that want to be helped. But I'm still trying to work out, because I mean, and I'm sure you are as well. It's like, well, how would we reach those people? But it doesn't seem to be a way that you can reach them until they're ready to be reached. Is that, or am I missing something there?
I definitely don't think you're missing something, Damien. And once again, this is just my opinion. I'm sure there's people who are much nicer than I am, more empathetic than I am, who see things a little bit differently. But for me, the point of view that I've gotten to, really because of how, and this is something I feel is one of my gifts, and it's something special. It's just a strong awareness on how much time I have left. Going back to game theory, optimal way of living my life, right? Going back to the Optimer, the book I want to write.
Yeah.
If I have a limited time spent on Earth, it makes much more sense for me to take great people and make them absolutely exceptional than take good people. Actually, even good people, we can make them great pretty quickly. But like people who are like not that great, who don't want to work on it, to make them good. Like the delta of effort that it takes to take somebody who's like, doesn't want to change, doesn't really care, to good, from great to exceptional, is very different. Like all the energy you spent, and I'll use a personal example too, all the energy you spent on that individual you talked about, like if you had spent that energy just in people like, let's people like me, somebody you want to help, you would have impacted like 1,000 of those people really quickly. Yeah. And my quintessential example, my personal life, is my own father, right? Like he was an alcoholic for like 10, 15 years. And so many of until he passed, but there's so many family members in my life who tried to change him. Whereas my perspective is always like, I'm not serving humanity by investing. I tried at the beginning when I was maybe 9 or 10 years old. But after I said, like, all of this energy I could invest in one person, I could serve the other people. And because of long before Master Talk started, I was helping hundreds of people who wanted to change. And that was more fulfilling for me. And I know in retrospect, that was the right decision, but I didn't believe it at the time. But yeah.
It's an interesting point that you raised, because, I mean, and I wrestle with that as you're talking about it, because I have a similar sort of thing. It's like, well, you want to help, but at the same, and I've really wrestled with this question, want to help and go to great lengths to help. But it seems, and I know there's friends I have that work in the space of helping people at the very low end of society, and they spend a tremendous amount of time helping people that eventually can't be helped. They go off and, as unfortunate as it is, they'll commit suicide or something like that, which is tragic. But I watch how much effort they put into doing that and what that does to their life, and it's like, wow, but how do we balance that? Is it more a case of we just need to be putting more information out there so that there's more information from them to choose from and maybe get a different perspective? Is that something that we can do?
Absolutely. My recommendation is what I feel for most of us who want to make a difference in the world. Start with the people around you that you know you can serve, right? Like even the work that I do with Master Talk today, which is an odd tangent, but I think that makes sense. Like for 3 years, I was coaching people for free, right? Long before I started thinking, oh, I could be on a podcast, I could do a YouTube. That was never even the thing. There was like 50 people around me, and not all of them needed the help, but 15 of them were like, yeah, coach me for free. And I was just helping them win competitions. So I wasn't focused on like 15 million people. I was just like, oh, these are the 15 people around me. So I think that's where we start. So I'll give you an easy example. Because if we're not going to do the easy things, for sure, we're not going to do like help somebody who's suicidal. My God, like that, just thinking about it is really difficult, right? Yeah. So for me, it's more about something simple to start. Because I want this to have a positive outlook, which is, hey, wait a second. Make a list of the 20 to 25 people you care the most about in your life. Figure out when it's their birthday and put it on your Google Calendar and send them a video message on their birthday. Like, that's easy, right? That's
Mm.
something that we can get started with that pushes the needle in the right way, that creates the joy, that creates the impact. I do that with like 150 people now. Like I have 150 people's birthdays, mostly clients, friends, relationships that have really served me in my life. Just people I love. So it's good energy management. And I start
Mm.
there. But if we're not willing to even do that just to make people's day, we shouldn't try and help somebody who's going through a lot of trauma and a lot of dark places, because that will drain us as well.
That's an interesting. I mean, there's 2 points I want to come from that, and the first one I want to come back to that too, because I mean, I always wonder, and I've watched some people jump up and down and go, "Oh, you got to do this, you got to do that," and then when I look closer at what they're doing, they're actually not doing much at all.
Exactly.
They're whinging a lot, but they're not actually out there doing it and in those trenches. Because again, my friends that are out there doing it, they're not actually jumping up in public complaining about the situation. They're out there doing something about it. The other point that stood out for me as to what we can do, and what I've inferred from that is doing something, little things to let people know that they're worthwhile.
Correct.
I think that's pretty profound. From that perspective, because that's not something that necessarily you're taking the responsibility for someone else's life and putting that, it's not your responsibility, it's their responsibility, but you're giving them a bit of well thinking about themselves, or the ability to go, oh, there's a different option here. Because if they're not liking themselves very much, to let them know, hey, you're worthwhile. It might be that little spark that they start to get that awareness. They start to be, okay, I'm actually at the water trough. I can start drinking now. That kind of thing. Do you think maybe that's more of the messaging we need to get out there?
Absolutely. I think a little bit goes a long way. And that's what creates, I think, the momentum to serve people and help people. Because you're right, like, a lot of people talk a big game. Oh yeah, you need to do this, you need to do that. Whereas I'm much like you, which is like, transparency and honesty. Like, you won't see me volunteering a soup kitchen every week. Like, I just don't do that.
Yeah.
But what I will do is I'll do what's in my power, which is, okay, I'll jump on a bunch of podcasts. I'll serve my clients. I'll make free videos for everyone on speaking. I'll send birthday video messages to like 150 people every year. Just doing all of that, the energy's already taking most of it, but I'm doing it in a way that it's still good for me. But even if I just added 2 or 3 more things to that, like, I'd probably pop just energetically. So it's important to figure that out, but start with something is the big piece.
Yeah, that's important, because if we're trying to reach people that aren't listening, and it can be, it's simply a matter of, when you cross their paths, or maybe do we need, I'm going to regret saying this, government help to do this, because I always wonder about with anything with government, it's going to take forever to get it started, and then they're probably, with good intentions, but may not be as effective as delivering as they could be, from my experience anyway of dealing with government. Good intentions are there, but do we need to have something like that where we actually have some good campaigns, some good advertising campaigns that are government funded, to say, hey, you are worthwhile?
Right. So I think it's more like one step at a time, right? So before we get to the campaigns, I think one good reversal is going back to that framework around decisions versus passions. Because the best way to control the world is to first control ourselves. Because if we don't show up in a joyous way, I don't think the government's going to change much. Because the government, in my opinion, are just people who follow whatever the culture is. Right. So if the culture wants this, the politician for that culture will show up to win the election. Yeah. That's the way that I've always seen it. So what are other things that can help us get to that next level? So let's go back to that timeline, because I think you'll find the story fascinating. So I'm 12 years old, right, Damien? I figure out I want to be an accountant. And then from 12 to 19, I just want to be an accountant. So if you'd asked me what my passion was, I was like, I don't care, dude. I just want to make money. I want to take care of my family, and that's it. And I don't volunteer. I don't care about giving back.
I'm struggling with that 12-year-old saying they want to be an accountant. I just, that doesn't compute.
I know it sounds crazy. And to be frank, I did not know what an accountant was. I just knew that made the most sense.
No,
So
but
I'm
to put it
19
in
years old.
context, I mean, where I
Right.
went a similar sort of thing. I went to a trade school, and while I was there, and I think it was around year 7, so it would have been about that same 12 years oldish when you're in that area. Yeah, it's about that because my son's he's 14, he's year 9, so year 7. Yeah, exactly. One of the kids in class with me said he wanted to be a refrigeration mechanic because there'll always be fridges that need to be fixed. And I was like, oh, I was blown away by that, going, wow. And I didn't even contemplate thinking about what I wanted to do. I was like, oh, I'm going to go play football, or, can I go kick the ball around the yard? That was mine. But that really stood out to me that this person that was their objective that early because so it's funny how people get there at different times in their life.
Absolutely. I mean, whoever that person, they're a legend. But yeah, exactly. But the reason I got there a little bit faster was out of urgency, right? It was like, shit, well, I got to figure out my life because my parents struggling. My dad lost his job when I was like 15, so I was like, how do I figure this out? And I didn't want to work at McDonald's. No offense to McDonald's, but I just didn't want to do that. I wanted to be in a more financially secure place, so we didn't have to suffer anymore. So I get to university, Damien. This is where the story gets a little bit more interesting. And I'm in my first semester of university. I got a big suit on that I wore for prom that's oversized. I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't have any relationships in the business world. And I go to cocktails because people tell me I need to work for the big 4 accounting firms. If you want to be successful, get a job at Deloitte, get a job at KPMG, PwC. I never heard of these companies before. Yeah. Thought PricewaterhouseCoopers was a water bottling company. That's how lost I was. For those who don't know, PricewaterhouseCoopers is an accounting firm. Yeah. So I go to these cocktails, Damien. And I asked them, like, how did you get a job? And then they all said, oh, do case competitions. And then I find out later a case competition is this thing where these companies come, they sponsor, you do a great job, like we had in our previous interviews. You do a great job, you get a job. That's why I did them. Then I accidentally fell in love with case competition. Then I started coaching people how to speak. Then Master Talk started. But the punchline is missed in that story often. Yeah. Think about it like this, Damien. When I was 12 years old, if I never made the decision, not passion, if I never made the decision to be an accountant, I never would have went to business school. I never would have learned about case competitions. I never would have developed a talented communication coaching and Master Talk. And this conversation on our friendship would not exist in the ether. So what's the point? It all starts with that decision. That's why, going back to Gay Hendricks' framework, I found my zone of excellence, which is honestly easy to find. If you dig deep enough, you don't have to be passionate about it. Just find something that makes money. But then that you can tolerate. And the reason that's very controversial. The reason I say that, by the way, because people are already throwing stones at me.
In what way is it controversial?
Yeah. So a lot of people think this is controversial. They're like, yeah, well, Brenden, why would I ever do something that doesn't bring me joy? Right? That's why it's controversial to some. Because it's like accounting. I was like, yeah.
We'll unpack that in a minute. I want to go there.
Sure, we will. But my frame and the reason I say that's so key is because even if you're living your ikigai, even if you're living your zone of genius, like me and you, like we're doing what we love, life is great, there's still shit you don't want to do. There's still things you don't want to do. There's still meetings you don't want to have. And you just have to do them sometimes. Okay, there's a couple of sales calls I just need to close this month, right? So there's going to be situations in our life or admin tasks that we don't like. So my advice is always get used to doing work you don't like. So that way, when you get to the thing that you're passionate about, when you find it later, you're going to live a much more joyous life because your expectations will be lower. Because it's not this bliss state that you're in 24/7. The last piece on this, and then feel free to unpack what you'd like there, Damien, is then what happened is when you find your zone of excellence, whether it's being a mechanic, a refrigeration operator. I love that answer because it's so specific. That's why I love that.
This guy was cool. Yeah. And I think there was, and we're talking about what is manly. I mean, at that age, in year 7, age 12, he knew what he wanted, which was confidence, which I think there's an element of that, which whether I think it's male or female, there's an attractiveness to confidence, but also to it's a knowing of what is right for you as well. That gives you that confidence, because confidence is not something you have. You don't have confidence in this, and you can't go to your local supermarket and go on the shelf and there's a bit of confidence and you've got it. It's misuse of words. It's not a noun. which is I get confused on those. It's a verb. It's an act. It's a doing thing. You be confident. You don't find it. You can actually just turn it on, which is a whole nother topic. We'll get to that another time, maybe. But sorry, I'm interrupting.
No, you're not at all. You're not at all, Damien. Because the reason why I like that story you brought up, and the reason I love that person, that 7-year-old you had referred to, is obviously much older today, is that person had a level of self-awareness that most human beings just don't want. We all possess the self-awareness, but we're not willing to dig deep enough for. So when you answer something like refrigeration operator, you know you're not following the status quo. It's like, no, I looked at all the careers and I want to be a refrigeration operator. Because there's no wrong answer here. That's why I love his answer. And then the last part of that framework is when you get to your zone of excellence. For him, it was refrigeration operator. For me, it was accountant. For somebody, or management consulting. For somebody else, it was be a guy on Wall Street, lawyer. You get to an interesting place in your life where you solve for one of the three buckets. If we look at health, money, and purpose / relationships, you solve for one of them, which is money. So when you start making money, if you're smart and realize that what the number one purpose of money is, which in my opinion is to buy your time back, now you're in an interesting place where you're not stressed out about money like I was. So then I stopped stressing about money. I was making 70, 80 grand a year, which was an astronomical amount of money at the time for me. And then I started paying off all of our family debt. Whether I liked the job was important. Luckily for me, I liked the job, but it didn't even matter if I didn't. And what matters is I was good at it, and I was getting paid money to do it. So I pay off all of our debt. We had 20 or 30 grand in debt. And now at this point, I'm 22 or 23. And then I go, I could just keep doing my zone of excellence and make money. But now I feel a void in my life. So now I get to the last stage of the game, which is, there's more stages, but the last big stage, which is now I have money. So now I don't have to worry about eating canned beans anymore because I'm working my zone of excellence. But now it's the final work. This is where the inner work is, and this is where most people lose, because most people get stuck in the zone of excellence. They'll do what I say, but then they get stuck in the zone of excellence. So now how do we transition from excellence to genius? There's no silver bullet, but the one that worked for me, the lead bullet that worked for me, was a process where you write down 5 to 10 things that you would be interested of doing for the rest of your life if money wasn't an object. The reason I don't like saying that at the beginning of the framework is because everyone listening to my advice will end up being broke. So make money first. That's always my advice. Because for some people who's listening to this, Damien, the reason I'm very mindful of that is for somebody listening, it might not be start a business. It might be, I should just stay at working as an accountant, but I like crochet. So I'm just going to keep doing crochet on the side, but I'm making money and supporting my family so that eventually one day this crochet thing gets out of control. Whereas me, I just got really lucky that my gift is a highly monetizable skill set. People want to pay me thousands of dollars for coaching. That's not something I knew. And then the last piece is you make that list and you write a number next to each piece. And the number corresponds to the following question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how energetically excited would you be to do that thing for the next 10 years? I'll repeat that one again. On a scale of 1 to 10, how energetically excited would you be to do that one thing for the next 10 years? And whatever's a 10, you do and you find your zone of genius.
I love that. And when in listening, going through that point, there's 2 points I want to talk about. Because you say you enjoyed the accounting, and you're making decisions. Because I look at my life, for example, and I really never had a problem making a decision. The reasons for making a decision, as I might have mentioned earlier, was running away from things. I joined the army to get out of school. When I was in the army, I didn't want to run around the bush anymore. So there was a cooking position. I knew girls like guys that could cook, so that was a motivation. To do that, and it got me out of running around the bush. But then I ended up getting posted to the SAS, so I was still running around the bush anyway, and jumping out of airplanes, which is even scarier. So a lot of, but I put it down to, and I facetiously say is because my star signs are Leo rat. So being a cat and also rat, it was like, oh, shiny thing, I'll go over there. Oh shit, that's fire. Get out of that. Come back over here. Right. And that was kind of my life in a way. But as you said, taking care of that, I never really thought about the the financial security thing, but I didn't really have to, because I always ended up in places where I kind of made a fair bit of money, and then I'd go and spend it all, and then I'd have to make more again, and that was a process I went through until I realized, hey, this is actually a bit painful. And you talked about this, the motivation, that anxiety. What do we write down? What is your anxiety to take action? Well, the anxiety to do something about having some solid wealth behind me, kicked in later in life when especially when I had a family. It was like, okay, we need some security around this, to make sure that they're okay, which comes to having a higher purpose. But in that process, and there was a number of things that I did, and I don't know if I've told you this story or not before, but there was a couple of jobs that I did that would be what you consider really sucky jobs. There was one time I was working just a temp in an organization, and they had these spreadsheets of data that hadn't formatted correctly when they'd been exported. So the columns were all over the place, like the rows and columns weren't lining up as they should. And they had no other way of doing it than other than manually going through and sorting and moving everything across. And we're talking tens of thousands of rows of stuff that was there. And that was my job, to sort through this and make everything line up correctly. And I treated it as a game. So, and I didn't realize what I know now, because I was quite young, about dopamine and how that makes you feel really good. But I treated it as a game. So I'm thinking, how can I sort this in a way so I can bulk move these columns across? And I had this format there, and I was getting really efficient at doing it, to the extent that people would come and go, "How's he doing this? Let's teach the other people to do it." Because it wasn't just my spreadsheet; it had 10,000 odd lines. When I say tens of thousands, there was all these spreadsheets, and there was 6 people doing this. So it was a massive task. They had thought was going to take weeks, and we ended up getting it done in a few days because I found that. But what the point I'm getting to, this was a really annoying task. And you mentioned about doing dishes before, and I don't find in my home that I actually am annoyed by doing that. I don't get frustrated at ironing. I don't get annoyed by having to do, because I said, well, I've got to do it. Why don't I make it fun? And I didn't realize about dopamine. Now that I realize about it, I that's how I play it. But I'm really relaying the story of how this works. And as I was thinking about that, now that I know that when you just have to think a happy thought and your body starts producing dopamine. I didn't know that a while ago. So I've actually trained myself to, whatever I'm doing, I'm thinking happy thoughts. So I run around all day on this high. It's like I'm on drugs all day, but I don't have a downer. Because I wake up feeling happy, and I'm unconsciously, I've taught myself to find things that make me feel happy, and I'm constantly feeling good. And I find that I'll notice that I might be starting, even when I'm really tired, I'll start to feel a bit tired, and all of a sudden it will kick in as though something is triggered, and I'll just start to feel good, and it automatically happens. And I'm relaying this back because part of what I'm thinking is, we've probably, even though we might not have known about how dopamine works, and I'm relaying this to the first feature film, the first animated feature film, was Snow White. And in that movie, Snow White, as she's cleaning the house with the birds and all the animals, they start singing "Whistle While You Work." And I was thinking about that, going, how profound is that song? And I'm sure it existed before they put it into the movie, that if you find the fun in something, you can have that fun. And you're talking about this being the excellence. So was it circle of excellence, or find your excellence?
Zone of excellence.
Zone of excellence. And this is where I was looking at that, and I want to take that step further. You're going, okay, I can enjoy whatever it is I'm doing for as long as I want to, because that's my choice. So I don't have to find this big purpose in life, or spend going off to mountains to gurus to work out what my purpose is. I can actually enjoy my life now. And that's why I wanted to challenge what this whole thing of, I've got to find what makes me happy. Well, we'll get to what makes you happy in a minute. Well, no, I'm going to go there now. It's because I love Wayne Dyer as one of my things, and he said there is no way to happiness. Happiness is the way. And my take on that, the secret to happiness is to be happy, because just simply thinking happy thoughts makes you happy, and you can enjoy whatever it is you're doing in that moment if you choose to. And that comes in that therefore your life it has a whole different perspective. And I know that might sound pretty, especially given in the face of what you've dealt with, of people saying, "Oh no, you've got to be joy, find what makes you happy." But I'm saying you don't have to find what makes you happy. Is you just be happy in what you're doing. Is that am I a little bit off kilter there? I'm a bit nuts.
No, I think it comes back to what we were talking about earlier, Damien. There's 1,000 ways to play this game.
Yeah.
Right. The way that I see life, and I'll think of better analogies as I mature through life. But all of us are like a Rubik's Cube, right? The little toy with a bunch of different colors, and we have to try and bring the cube to the right order. But most of us don't spend enough time trying to understand our own Rubik's Cube and trying to solve our own puzzle. Most of us don't even play with the cube. We either don't know it's there, we either recognize it's there, but we leave it kind of dusty, and there's a lot of dust on it, so we don't know nobody does it. And there's other people like you and me who take the Rubik's Cube and are still playing with it. Even after we have the purpose, we're just like, how do I do this? Oh, this is what makes me happy. This is what does it. This is what. And I think that's really the key, is most people aren't willing to look. And then when you're willing to look, then you find the right framework. Like the way that I always frame these conversations, which is how I listen to podcasts, is it's actually a new insight I developed last week called Impact 3. So Impact 3 is basically, for every thought leader that you follow, there is no way you're going to agree with 100% of what anyone says. Like if me and you, I'm sure there's something we could have a debate on that we are just completely different. I don't think there's a lot, but there's probably something that we just fundamentally disagree with.
Driving. You should drive.
Yeah, driving. Fair enough. Tune in next time. Another episode of What is Drively with David Anderson. So that's one.
I just realized that. Go ahead. Yeah.
But from me, even from a listener's perspective, what I do is I don't look to myself and say, what do I disagree with politically with Damien? What kind of religion do I disagree with him with? That's not what I'm looking for. Right? What I'm looking for, to your point about happiness, is what are 3 insights from Damien Andrews' life that I feel I don't know that I should implement in my life? And that's it. So for all of you who would listen to, I probably gave 15 frameworks today at this point. You probably gave another 10. So for those of you listening so far, the goal is saying, I don't really like what Brenden did. Why did he become an accountant? He just wants to take care of his family. He just wants to make money. That's fine. But then what you have to do is find the gold in there that you do agree with. So you go, you know what? I should probably make more decisions in my life. That process of elimination piece is really useful. I should probably do that. And if you just do that with 100 different people, you'll get 300 insights that you need to live a better life. And here's another one for you, which is called the 80-20 questions. I don't know if we've covered this in other interviews, but basically the 80-20 questions is a concept I coined that I got inspired from the 80-20 principle.
Yeah.
So the 80-20 principle, as we all know, as a recap, is what are 20% of the actions that drive 80% of our results in life, or also known as the Pareto principle.
Yeah.
My version of this, Damien, is what are 20% of the questions that we can ask ourselves as human beings that can accelerate one's clarity in life? 80% of the clarity. That's why I call them 80-20 questions. I'll give you 3 to get us started.
Yeah.
There's a bunch. I've asked thousands of these, literally thousands. Yeah. Close to 1,000 now, but it's probably more like a high number of hundreds.
I believe you.
Yeah, so number 1 is, if you had all the money in the world, how would you spend your time? Because all of us are optimizing for 65, which is a number the government gave us. And Steve Jobs was a billionaire many and many times over, and he died in his 50s with access to all of the best doctors in the world. So even with all the money he had, he couldn't go past 55 or 52 or something.
Yeah.
So that's the first piece. Let's say I retired everyone listening to this podcast right now. Give you everyone $1 billion listening to this. What would you do with your time? And a lot of people, Damien, this is where the problem is. They don't have a good answer to that question. I've asked probably 50 to 75 people in my life that question, and almost all of them shockingly answer with travel. And I go, how long are you going to travel for? They go, I don't know. And I was like, okay, so you're going to travel 5 years and then die? And they go, no, no, no. And I was like, then what do you do? And a lot of people don't know. So think about that question.
It's funny that you say that too, because it's interesting. I mean, I've been to 44 countries, and anything you do gets old if you do it enough. And it's like, it's not that I don't, but you see an interesting place, you see another interesting place, you see it, and it's like, it loses. It doesn't have the same impact. But that's if you can do that all the time. I mean, but and you're talking to someone though. But when you talk about travel, I mean, I've flown to Nice, got a private helicopter to Monaco. So when it's not. I've traveled a lot, and it's like, yeah, and you go places, and what really to me stood out was that wherever I went, people were pretty much the same. As far as their core values, they were saying that was really interesting. And then when you go, you notice there's differences, and you can learn from those differences. But you get to a point where there's only the what is it, the diminishing returns. You learn a lot, and then all of a sudden, then the next person you meet, you go, oh, yeah, they're different, but the principle of what they're doing is pretty much the same. There's a slight difference here. It's a little bit blue instead of reddish, but it's interesting how that plays out. So I just wanted to add that component to when people say want to travel. Usually, anything that people say that they want to do for the rest of their life, or if they had no money, it's because they haven't done it much. And it's like, well, and then when you start doing it a lot, you realize that, I love, was it Eddie Murphy talked about, if you, and he's relating it to sex, but, if you haven't had sex for a while, and all of a sudden, sex will be like a Ritz crack, and you're going, oh, and someone might give you, this crappy little no-name cracker. You're going, oh, this is a Ritz. And it's, if you haven't had something for a while, it becomes something that's like this amazing thing. But then that familiarity becomes, you go, oh, it gets a bit old hat after a while. I'm digressing there. Sorry, I'm distracting from what you're talking about, but it was just had to put that in about travel.
No, I love that. I love what you said around that, because I was like that with money, and I still am to a certain extent. When you don't have something, like I didn't have a lot of money growing up, and I still have a lot of money, but I definitely have enough now to provide. But at the beginning, it was like, that's what you worship. You worship that which you do not have.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely with you. So that's one piece. That's one question.
Yeah.
I'll give you two other ones. I got like 1,000 of these, but I'll give you three.
Yeah.
The second one is, if you could only accomplish three things in your life, only three, nothing else, what would you want to accomplish and why? It took me 3 years to answer this question. So even for those of you listening, the key is not to get to the perfect answer. I got my third one like a month ago, right?
Yeah.
So it's always a journey, but you want to get that first draft in. What are three things? And what this does, it focuses your life on what are your top three priorities. That's question two.
Yeah.
And finally, question three by Devon Bandison, which is, what's a goal or a dream that you secretly gave up on and never told anyone about? If you answer questions like this every day, in 30 days, you'll be a completely different human being.
That's a good point. That's a good habit to get as well. And I'm glad that you mentioned that about the 30 days as well, having those great questions to ask yourself every day, but doing it for 30 days. That is what makes a difference. And I'm just wondering about, coming back to your original point, about making decisions. And actually making a decision is more important, just actually making a decision. And I relate this to, because I said I never really had a problem making a decision to the nth degree, where when I was first started getting involved in stock trading and doing that, they talked about, if you have a stop loss, or a set of rules, you must follow the rules. So I followed it. It cost me money because I followed my rules. But I'm not upset about that, because I was actually solidifying that decision-making process, being able to go, okay, I've set a rule here. I'm going to make a decision, and rather than being like a deer in headlights and not doing anything, which is to your first point. And I'm just wondering from that side of things, and we link this together about what is manly. One, I mean, decision-making shows confidence, which is, is that a trait that we want in because that seems to be why people sit in basements and play video games and not go out into the world, because they lack confidence. and video games are set up to be easy. It's like, you know, and it was so funny. We when I was at, we had a poker night at my friend's place, and my son comes and joins those. But they did the re-release of the old video games, the Ataris and the NESs, those kind of things. And my friend had an Atari re-release, and my son was playing it, and he, you know, just basic Space Invaders and things like that. And after 3 lives, he's dead and out of the water. And he goes, "What? You have to start from the beginning again." He was kind of, because, you know, video games now, you just respawn where you are and continue on. It's like, but then you were dead. You had to start from the very beginning. There was no skip ahead. You had to go through all that process again to get to where you just died, which was interesting from his perspective. It was funny watching him going, "What? How do you?" But I'm just wondering from that perspective of, you know, because I was thinking that being a little bit facetious about video games, you can sit there because it is easy. There's no real challenge to it. If you were dead after 3 goes, you might get out of the basement. But this decision making, it's a confidence thing. Is that? I mean, because I'm thinking as you've been talking, I've been thinking about what it is. Can we nut this out into what is manly? And is it really coming back to that point of, hey, just make a decision and do something? Do you think?
Absolutely. Well said, Damien. So the way that I think about the correlation between both is that as we make good decisions, our confidence increases. As our confidence increases, we make better decisions. As our decision making gets better, so it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. But the problem is, to your point, we don't make even the smallest decision a better life or how we want to play. So the 0 to 1 is a lot harder than the 1 to 100. Because when you're in a process like me or you, it's like you're always doing this all the time. Like I'm never going to stop asking myself questions because I'm in the rhythm now.
Yeah.
And my decision making has improved over time. But if we don't start that process, we don't build that muscle, we don't get fitter in the way that we make decisions. That's why I always opt for, because people have poor decision making skills at the beginning. Let me put this out for the world. Should not be entrepreneurs to begin with, right? I think that's a horrible thing to do because your chances of success are already low as it is, even if your decision making skills are really sharp. And if you're on top of that, you suck at decision making, I mean, you're kind of screwed in entrepreneurship. That's why I always optimize against a job. So for everyone listening, the first decision you can make is really opening a Wikipedia page, going through all the careers and just scratching off the stuff that you know for sure you don't want to do. And you don't have to do it in one sitting. I'm a crazy lunatic. I'll do it in one sitting at 12 years old. But for those of you who are listening to this, just scratch 10 off a day. That's a decision. Not choosing not to do something is also a decision. So for example, making the decision to say, you know what, I don't want kids, or I want kids, or or I do want to travel for a month, or you know what, I don't want to do that. It's those micro decisions. I'll give you a fun one that's, I think, more relatable. Just like 6 months ago, I was drinking something. This is just hot water. I don't drink coffee or tea anymore. So that was just a small decision that I made. And then one other decision I made, because I listened to like 15 different health experts, and what's funny is they all disagree with each other, which is really confusing for us. But there's one thing that I realized they all agreed on, and that's eating avocados. That's like literally the only lining thread I got from all of them. Because some people say eat fruit, some people say don't eat fruit. I was like, how is fruit unhealthy for you? Anyways, so I put a rule in my house. Every single day, or at least 5 times a week, I should eat an avocado. And it's not, there's no recipe, there's no salt and pepper on it. I literally take the avocado, shove it in my mouth. I just do that every day.
I'd have to make it into guacamole.
Not even, because I don't have time for that. But the point I want to drive is that's a decision too. A decision to stop drinking soft drinks is a decision, or at least to reducing the consumption from 5 times a week to 3 times a week is a decision. We all make decisions. We've all had success. All of us are successful listening to this. It's just we're not as successful as we want to be, and that's a very big difference. So I think the big part, the beginning process actually, for people who are just getting started, is make a list of the best 5 decisions you made in your life and why you're proud of them. I think that's one thing. And that self-reflection gives you confidence to then go, you know what, Brendan's right. I'll give you one fun example. I'll throw it back to him. Just give me a bunch of examples when people take one that they like. So I get this a lot with my clients because a lot of them are Indian origin, right? So they
Yeah.
immigrate from India, and then they come to New York or something. They become execs, and they always tell me, and it's so funny,
Yeah.
and I'm sure this will relate to some people. Oh my God, I can never master communication. Random word exercise, pick a word like phone, like home. Impossible. I can't do this. But use that analogy and extrapolate it. Oh, I can't lose weight. Oh, I can't take a walk.
Mm.
Oh, I can't. And I always ask them, I always go, what's the hardest thing you ever did in your life? And they always go, oh, leave my entire family to go to America or to go to Australia, to go to Canada. And I was like, what do you think is harder, to do the random word exercise or to uproot your entire life and still make it work? And they go, oh, yeah. So we already are great. We just don't realize that we're spending enough time thinking about it.
That's an interesting point that you just raised there, that we already are great. I think that's very profound as well, as having that realization that you are great, that you do so many things really well, and your own self-talk is just obliterating you. And I use that word specifically because this is what I deal with all the time, especially I mentioned before, dealing with people that working, they're going through a court experience. A lot of the times, I'll ask them what do they want, and they go, oh, I don't want this, don't want that. And it's like, you can't walk into a courtroom and say, I don't want this. It doesn't work. You have to say what you want. They'll only give you what you ask for. If you don't ask for it, and I had that with with one of the dads I was working with, and he hadn't seen his child for 12 months because the mum wouldn't allow that. And so he's in the courtroom, and because it's not the judge's role to give you advice. It's not their role to give you. They need to be impartial. They can't say, "Oh, you should do this or should do that." That they can't do that, and it would be wrong for them to do that because then they would be biased. So all they can do is impartial and then look at what you ask for. And so he wasn't, and rightly so. They weren't going to put a child and hand over the child for a weekend with a dad that hadn't seen the child for a week, because they don't know how the child's going to react. It's not good for the child. They always put the child's interest first. The thing was, after that, because we were messaging backwards and forwards, I wasn't there with him. But and by the time I got to ask this question, he was out of the courtroom. But I said, "Did you ask to get supervised care?" And he goes, "No." I said, "Did you get it?" And he goes, "No." He goes, "Well, he wasn't going to get it because he never asked." So next time he went back to the courtroom, because that was the appropriate decision to make for the judge to go, okay, you have, obviously you should see the child, and that's what we need to work towards. But he never asked. And that's where, and I look at what people do, and a lot of people I talk to, they'll always be talking about, how they can't do something or how there's this problem in the way, as opposed to, and I really underestimate the work that I've gone through to actually get to the point where unconsciously I just go, how do I use this? And I'm clear about where I'm going, and the answer just is immediately there. So I'm just wondering, from the perspective that we're looking at, is what is manly, and I know it is applicable to both genders, but for those people that are lost, is it just start making a decision that becomes a habit. The 30 days of asking yourself a question or making a decision, make a little decision that becomes a stronger habit, and that becomes your life. Is that what people need to do, and how do they do that?
Absolutely, Damien. And I always love your analogies and your stories to explain something. When you're explaining, you're like, yeah, this guy lost custody of the kid. I was like, wait, what? So
I mean, this is the point that I'm getting to, that these are serious things, and we don't have the skill. That's why coming full circle back to that, looking at my dad who never had to find another job, and because it wasn't expected, and that worked. But now that we've got this infinite choice, we haven't taught people how to make a decision, and really it's, how do we make a decision? Well, you choose. It's such a simple instruction, but it's so simple that we just kind of miss it, I think. Is that
absolutely? So I think the simple way of kind of summarizing today's convo is start by asking yourself what you want. What do you desire in your life? Right? Just a bunch of things. It could be a big house. It could be a wife. It could be kids. It could be something smaller. Like, man, I wish I could have an avocado every day too. Or I wish I could like one of my silly things.
More Lego.
Yeah, more Lego. Like one of my silly things was just like, I just love to have dinner with a friend every week. Right? Nothing expensive or dinner, like $20, $30, $50 for two people. Like, yeah, I'd love to have the money someday for that, because I did it. Like just like what am I, 26 now? So literally 5 years ago, I didn't have that.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that long. I was just like, yeah, I'd love to just have dinner every week. It's a new restaurant. It sounded wild to me.
Yeah.
It's like $25 per person. Sounds insane. So that was my thing. And then so make a list of what you want, and then pick the easiest thing. Just pick the easiest thing that you want, and then make a decision, just a simple decision around how do I get that thing, and then celebrate the achievement of that thing, because you should get it pretty quickly if it's something easy.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's a dessert you haven't tried at a restaurant because you just didn't want to spend the money. And then this week you're making a decision to do it because you want to do it. And then when you start to realize that I actually control my life destiny, then you get deeper and deeper. Okay, well, if I can get this, what else could I get? So like the 80-20 questions came as a result of me kind of making good decisions. And then eventually I blocked. So I was like, okay, I want to be an accountant. And I was like, being an accountant doesn't make that much sense. I could be a management consultant, get paid double, and do work that I actually enjoy. So I became a management consultant. And then I was like, oh, you know what? Mass Talk is actually way more interesting. It fulfills my purpose. I think that's my zone of genius. I think I should give it a try. I make videos for fun. And then I find a coaching client. Then I find a business partner. I was like, oh, this seems to be the right decision. Then I go here. And then it's like, oh, how do I find myself and understand myself at a deeper level? 80-20 questions. Then I went deeper and deeper. So it's a constant puzzling. Like, even if you take my Rubik's Cube, Damien, that's what I'm the most proud of. That Rubik's Cube is not complete.
Yeah.
Like, out of the 6 sides of that Rubik's Cube, I'd probably guess I figured out 2.
Yeah.
So I think just a little bit of clarity goes a long way. Even if you could just figure out one of the sides to that Rubik's Cube of your life, and I mean that as an analogy to your life, you're in a much better spot than 99% of people are, which is unfortunate, but also freeing.
But I love that those 3 steps that you talk about. Make a list of what you want. Pick the easiest one, do it, and celebrate. And that's if you did that, and made that something that you did regularly, and if you're picking the easiest one, it should be fairly easy to do on a daily basis, maybe depending on where you are. But I'm making probably a big assumption there. But anyway, that's a really a great process for starting this, and starting the process, but actually developing the decision making muscle. Make a list, pick the easiest one, and do that, and celebrate, because then you're going to get a good feeling about doing that, and you're going to do it again and again and again. I really love that. That's pretty profound, Brenden.
Thanks, man. You always bring out the best in me.
Yeah. I mean, because when we're talking about this whole being manly thing, it is really from your, and I love what you said before, make a decision. But here's how to make a decision. How to make a decision. Make a list, pick the easiest one, and do that. And then celebrate. Have fun. I love that. Awesome. So we're going to have to, coming back to the driving thing, I'll relay a little bit of a story from when I was younger. Cause
I got to drop in 3 minutes. By the way.
Okay, well, we won't do that. We'll tell you about it another time. I want to...
I'll come back for part 4.
Yeah, that's fine. We've discussed a lot and we've covered a lot, and we've circled back. But I really, and I love your take on, we need to actually just focus on making this decision rather than this life purpose. Have fun, because that's a choice in the moment. Just enjoy it because you can enjoy it, and to develop the decision-making process, make a list, pick the easiest one, and celebrate. And that's my takeaway from what you've shared here. Anything you'd like to add to that before you have to drop off? Or?
I love that, Damien. I mean, the only other add-on there is remember that time is always running out on us. That's the real enemy. It's not the guy who cuts us off in traffic. It's not our mom who's yelling at us for not taking out the trash, or our wife yelling at us for not taking out the trash. It's time, and it's always ticking on all of us. So the faster we figure this stuff out, the more enjoyable our life becomes. So I encourage all of you, and for all of you, it's different levels. For some of you, it's going, let's do exactly what Damien said. Okay, make a list of what you want, easiest thing, celebrate.
For other people will what you said.
Yeah, I know, but I'm giving you credit to you brought it out. And for other people, it's more advanced. They're like, oh, I already do that. I already accomplished that. Let me do 80-20 questions. What would I do with all the time in the world? And I answered that question too when I was at IBM, and I said, I don't think I should be working here. Somebody else should be doing these tech implementations, because no one can have this conversation with Davian right now. So that should be me. So I should be spending my time doing this, not in a meeting doing a tech implementation. So yeah, that's the key.
Love that. Brenden, it is always so wonderful chatting with you. Thank you for making the time. I know it's, you've got a very busy schedule, but I really appreciate you making the time and helping us find the framework for what is manly. Thank you.
Of course. Thanks for having me, David.
Thank you for being part of the Share.care community and helping people around the world prosper. You're creating a bigger pie for everyone to share. The more people contributing to the world being a better place, the better the world becomes for others and for you.